Welcome, Lindsay Wilson.
Hi, Breanne. Nice to see you again.
Yes, it's always a pleasure to have you on. And I am excited about today's conversation because we're switching it up. Lindsay is going to be interviewing me. So
Yeah.
we're
Yeah,
going to do a little podcast host swap. But before we do, Lindsay, will you just briefly introduce yourself and what you do?
absolutely. My name is Lindsay Wilson, and I'm the founder of Positive Performance and the Mindset Coach Academy. And I have a 4-month certification program for aspiring mindset and mental performance coaches. I'm also a mom to 4 daughters under 9. So one of those is more important than the other. But so keep busy with all of that. And yeah, I was a former professional athlete. And really, my story, the reason that I'm here today is because I got mental performance training. I was lucky to get it at 16 years old and really changed the course of my life. So I'm here paying it forward. And yeah, that's my mission. That's my passion. I believe in the transformational power of sports. And I believe mental performance training should be taught and learned by everybody.
Yes, I agree. So, for those of you that don't know, I went through Lindsay's certification back in 2019. So, it was honestly the Kickstarter to the career and the business that I have now. And many of you who have, been in our world or know about the elite mental game, or maybe your kids have gone through it, this is really where it all started. So, I am excited because we often get questions about how did you do it? What certification did you go through? How did you start? I get a lot of questions from a lot of moms who just want to know from themselves, or they want to help out their daughter's team, or they are a coach themselves and they want to add a little bit more to their coaching. And so we're here to answer it all. So
Yeah, absolutely.
we're
Yeah.
going to do it.
I got my microphone on, you got yours on,
Okay.
and yeah, I mean, we've talked about this a lot over the years, but so many people come into your world and our world and are like, where do you even start? They're like Googling it. Maybe they find me, maybe they find you, and they're like, where do I even start? They get overwhelmed. There's a lot of information out there, a lot of different options as far as where to move forward. And I think the best thing would to do would just be like, what was the impetus? Where were you in 2019 prior to the certification where you were like, huh, I think I kind of want to do this thing, maybe sort of like, and then you
Mhm.
found us. Where were you like mentally? What were you looking for? Like, talk us through all that.
Yeah. The first thing I think that's important about this is that I was a coach. So at that time, I was a head volleyball coach in my 5th year, I believe, taking over a highly successful volleyball program. And, I was a former college athlete, and they don't teach you how to, like, being
Yeah.
a college athlete doesn't make you a good coach and definitely doesn't make you a good mental performance coach.
Right.
So, I started coaching and was learning all the things around like coaching the actual sport. And then I had 2 seasons back to back where my team had made it to this like winner to state, loser out situation, but I had really talented athletes and we crumbled in that game and didn't make state 2 years in a row, like for the first time in history, and I'm
Yeah.
like, gosh. So not the way you want to like,
Yeah.
make history.
Right.
And so honestly, as a coach, I was like, okay, I've got to look at myself. I've got to figure this out. And I'm not sure how Lindsay like popped up on my feed, but I was like, oh, maybe this is the thing, like
Yeah.
there's actual like a whole nother part of the game that I can be teaching. And I was always interested in sports psychology. I studied it in my undergrad. I like had some of these tools as a college athlete. Most of you know my story about kind of realizing how important the mental side of the game was and how it impacted my volleyball career, but like I didn't know how to teach it. So when
Mhm.
I came across Lindsay's stuff, I was like, oh, this actually could be like the roadmap. And as I like dug a little further, I was like, oh, and this actually could be a cool thing, not just for my team, but like for other athletes in this area. In the beginning, I was thinking very small, like, I could be like the go-to mental performance coach for Clark County, the county that I live in.
Yeah.
I think there's like 5 clubs within like a 20-mile radius, and like I could train them. And so my wheels started turning. I'm like always, although I was a teacher and a coach, like I just have always been like an entrepreneur at heart, like always had this goal of like having my own business and, creating my own schedule and all of this. Then my wheels started turning into that. So I don't want to get too far
Yeah.
into it, but like that's where I was. I also had, I think I said 6 months, but she was a year and a half. I had a year and a half old at the time as well. So I was like, I would love to be able to have more flexibility, although teaching is flexible in some ways, it's very not in other ways. And so
Yeah.
I was like, it'd be really cool if this was a thing. So that's kind of where the spark started.
Yeah, I love that. I love that because I think I mean, it seems sort of like comical now for you to have thought like really that small, but I think
Yeah.
that's really where our brain has to go first. Like, in our certification or any of our like ultimate like intro trainings, we talk about like fishing in the pond you're in. And really, like, I mean, so many people probably watching this are like, oh, yeah, my daughter's club or the clubs in the area. I mean, literally, I know so that you'll find this funny. Like some people are like, are there too many mental performance coaches? And I'm
Oh,
like,
yeah.
okay. So if you go down anywhere like within 10 miles of your house to a club or a facility or a community center, whatever, is there a mental performance coach there? Likely
No.
not, right? And that exists everywhere in the world. Like
Mhm.
there are so many opportunities. And so I just think that like that's a really important piece of all this is like literally, even if you had just done that, Breanne, I mean, obviously you went so much bigger, you would have a really great business.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and very fulfilling too.
Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
helping people. Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Talk to me about like, because we were talking about this offline, but I think that, and maybe, into the year and a half, you're still sort of like, you've had a couple now, you're still
Yeah.
sort of like in that, like, your brain's not necessarily on right quite yet, as far as just coming out
Right.
of like baby mode, right? I think
Hmm.
probably a lot of people that come into our certification have older kids,
Hmm.
but if you could articulate sort of, I see a lot of women wanting to get into this space because, whatever the word is, there's like either they're feeling like dissatisfied with like the job, either not working or the job that they have that maybe doesn't have the flexibility, or they have almost like this, they've put so much time and energy and money into their kids, but they're like, what's in it for me? Like, I'm ambitious. Maybe they've kind of swallowed it for a little while, as a lot of us do when we have young
Yeah.
kids, and they're like coming up. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I do see that a
Yeah.
lot. And I'm just wondering, like, how you was it ambition? Was it like what was it that was like calling you besides helping people? Because that's important, right? The fulfillment of helping people.
Yeah, yeah, that was there. And then also just the pain of like, I need to figure this out for my team or I'm going to get fired as a coach.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah.
but
That'll drive you.
yeah. But also I think it like those kind of defining stages in our lives, although my kids are still young, I'm not at this, but I assume, when you have a baby, like everything changes and your priorities change, things shift. And I think also I know a lot of moms in our world are looking towards like, well, my kids are going to be graduating in a few
Yeah.
years. And that's another kind of life shift that starts to happen where you can start to reevaluate your priorities a little bit. So at that point, I was in one of those like shifts, major shifts in my life where I'm like, okay, now I have a family and what do I want this? I'm looking forward to like, well, they're going to be in their activities and I want to be able to be
Mhm.
present for all of that. And I want to have a schedule that I can take off and go to their field trips. And I was motivated by that too. Uh,
Yeah.
just this idea of being my own boss. And like I said, I just always have had this entrepreneur like spirit in me that I like to build, I like to create. To be totally honest, I was getting a little bored with teaching. I was like, okay, here, and although entrepreneurship has its ups and downs, I just was kind of longing for something a little bit more. I would always spend like any free moment that I got, I was like, trying to like build, this was kind of like after I learned the skills and the certification and saw what was possible. I was like building my email list and like
Mhm.
reaching out to clubs and like every down moment, that's what I was doing. And that's what I was like, okay, yeah, this is something that is really pulling me because of the lifestyle that I want and the purpose and the passion that I want.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so you went through the certification. Did you look at anything else like sports psychology degree or just doing it on your own? Or was it like you found us and you were like in?
Yeah, that's a great question because I actually get asked that a lot too.
Yeah.
I looked a little bit into sports psychology degree and was like, well, that's just not happening because I'm not spending another $60,000 another 5 years of like,
Yeah.
and you don't need a sports psychology degree to teach these skills. And
Yeah.
so I was like, okay, certification just makes more sense like from that perspective. I already done enough Googling and, piecing things together. Like I said, I have a teaching background, so I like curriculum. I like a roadmap. I like
Yeah.
things laid out. I don't
Yeah.
like just Googling, piecing things together. And I also pay for my time. So
Yeah.
like I had already wasted time trying to like cobble things together and like find random tips and try this, try that. And here is the way to make it like it's very time bound. I knew how long it would take. It was already proven. So there's that. I don't want to like I don't know how much we want to go into. I did look at two other certification programs, probably the
Yeah.
only other two that would pop up if you're looking into this. And to be honest, I was drawn to Lindsay because you were like me, like,
Yeah.
former athlete, you're a woman in this space. I was drawn to the way that you taught and the way that you talk. I know that you're like, you maybe couldn't, if you are in this space and you're looking around, you maybe can't put your finger on what that is. But I'm like, I like the fact that she is, the other two were run by men. And, she's the only woman in this space that's doing this. And
Yeah.
so I was drawn to that. And, that you're a mom, you get it. So it's like, I just connected on all those levels too.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I appreciate that. So you looked at those and then you got certified. And then what did you do? Because I think, I don't know if we did this when you were in class, but like we really talk about, I mean, everybody looks at you and are like, I want to be Breanne. And I'm like, okay, maybe I'm not a dream killer over here, but we step by step it, right? Like, how can
Yeah.
you get your first paid client? How can you make your money back from the certification? How can you have an awesome side hustle? And then,
Mhm.
you didn't leave your job for a while. So like
Right.
talking through all those stages, I think is really important because you're not going to go from not having a business to leaving your day job in a few months. Like that just doesn't happen,
Right.
right? And for a lot of people, just the certification itself and like starting their own business and like making some money is like what they want and what they need in their life. So I always think it's really important to talk about the different stages because it's not just about the money, it's about who you get to become by pushing
Yeah.
yourself through the entrepreneur journey. So can you talk about that a little bit? Like the stages, what excited you about them, how you started? I know it's kind of like an open-ended question, but I think you get it.
Yeah, totally. Well, first I want to back up even before that because it was an investment for our family to even do
Yep.
the certification in the first place. My husband is also a teacher and a coach.
Yeah.
So it was like, okay, we really had to consider this. And I wanted it. I think the thing that like took me over the edge and also forced me to be a problem solver in this area, like,
Yeah.
was you just saying like, okay, let's say you wait like a year from now, like certification first might be more expensive. And also like, what's going to change in a year from now? And I'm like, I'm probably going to be in the same spot in the postseason being like, dang it, my team didn't make it to state again.
Yeah.
And also just all this opportunity that I started to allow my mind to daydream about was like, oh, I'm not going to be able to do that if I don't have direction. I don't have a guide. And so I got really creative. I'm only saying this because I know that some people are maybe in the same boat as me. For part of our like teacher development, there's funds that you can use for professional development. Same thing for the volleyball program. There's funds that help fund programs to help enhance our team. And so I took advantage of the money that was available. And it wasn't an enormous amount of money. I think it was like a couple $100s each, but I was like, hey, I am using this as a teacher in my classroom. I'm also using this to greatly enhance my volleyball program. So yes, I'm going to use booster funds that are available for
Yep.
this. So, and it was all, I applied for it, got it, it's certified. And then we're not like, I know people have opinions about like debt and all of this, and we don't accrue unnecessary debt, but I did open up a credit card, and because there was like this bonus, there's this bonuses when you open up a credit card, and if you paid off within a certain amount of time, no interest. We're very financially smart and wise. So just hopefully, you got to
Yeah.
know your own financial situation. But for us, it worked out great. I got my certification half paid for just in those efforts with the
Yeah.
booster, the school district, having that bonus on opening the credit card and then just paying it off right away. So
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
to let your wheels turn around like, oh, before just writing it off, like, oh, it's too expensive, I won't be able to do it. So
Well, and I think I love that story, Breanne, because I think that's one, what I heard you say is it forced me to become a problem solver. I think,
mhm.
well, like you and I know as mental performance coaches, it's like once you decide something's not available for you, your brain shuts off solutions. Instead,
Yeah.
you said, I'm going to do it. How? And then your brain figured it out. And I imagine you were also, which is a really scary thing. I imagine the conversations with your husband were also
Mhm.
around, maybe not in the beginning because you were doing it for professional development, but you're like, okay, how can I first make this money back? Like, how can
Yeah.
this pay for itself? Like, when did you have that sort of mindset? And like, was that a scary thought? Was it an exciting thought? Was it both? Like, that's like
Mhm.
holding your feet to the fire.
Yeah, it was. To be honest, I don't remember that exact conversation because my husband is very like, he's like, you'll figure it out. I know you will. Like he has
Yeah.
like
But
ultimate
even
faith.
with yourself, though, I mean, I
Yeah,
imagine you were
yeah.
sort of like, oh no, now it's go time.
Yeah, yeah. I think that started to set like I had ideas of how I was going to be able to do that, but it wasn't until I got into the certification I was like, I'll know I'll figure it out. But it wasn't until I got into
Yeah.
the certification that I was like, Oh yeah, like this will definitely pay for itself. And it did.
Yeah.
I can get into that here in a second because I graduated in November and I got my certification paid back. Well, like it paid
Yeah.
for itself
Yeah.
in January. So yeah, got into it to kind of answer your original question around that. Like got into it that first month. It was great because it was all just focused on myself and, my own mindset and my limiting beliefs around a lot of things in coaching and just like me showing up in the world, and that was awesome. And then it got into like these very tangible skills, which was so great because I had my team in front of me. It was during the summer
Mm.
and I was like, oh, I could just use this on my team right now. And the team loved it. Like it does take a little bit of like, you've got to embody this and you've got to believe
Yeah.
it yourself, which is a whole nother conversation. But
Yeah.
I started, they were my guinea pigs. And then learning the kind of the roadmap and like how all the skills kind of fit together. And it was just what I wanted because it was like, here's your lesson plan and
Yeah.
here's how it goes. Like, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. You always said that. And then about like bringing your gifts to the world. And, that was a little bit scary to kind of proclaim that I was like going to be a mental performance coach and that I was offering these services, but I did it. It was like this constant like stepping out of my comfort zone, stepping out of my comfort zone. But my first big step out of the comfort zone was when I decided that I was going to partner with a club, like a local club that I had been affiliated with in the past. I'd coached for this club and I approached the club director and I was like, hey, this is what I'm doing. And I really think that this could benefit athletes. Do you think that I could take 20 minutes or maybe I don't think it was 20 minutes. Can I take 15 minutes of your parent meeting?
Yes.
Beginning of the
Yes.
season. Yeah. And I remember like with you, I was like, what am I going to, they said yes, but now what do I do? And so, which was great because I was able to like bounce my ideas of like my presentation off of you and like, how do I collect email addresses at this meeting? And, how do I do all this? And so, yeah, I went up, I'll never forget going up on stage for that parent meeting. There were probably like 200 parents there. And I kind of told my story. I talked about like the program. I decided I was going to do like an 8-week live via Zoom group mental training like
Yeah.
session.
Yeah.
And I was charging not very much, but yeah, I just kind of laid it out there. I gave them like the opportunity to sign up for it. And that night, I remember looking at the registrations and I was like, oh my gosh, I made $4,000 on this. So that many people had signed up like because I was like, wow, this shows me a lot. There's a need for this and people are going to pay for this. And I mean, it was awesome. So I met with those girls for 8 weeks. We did a middle school group, we did a high school group, got to like practice all of this and get paid for it. So anyways, that's a long-winded, but
Yeah. I love that brand though. Like, okay, so you got certified and like you kept pushing yourself and then you had this big thing. And I just think about like there's these milestones in our life, right? And like the you before getting on that stage and then you like seeing $4,000 come into your account,
Mhm.
like that is not a small amount of money. It's not as much as
Oh,
you made, but that's like to have that validation. I'm just interested in like, do you look back on that and think of the you before and the you after and like that feeling? I mean, again, it's the money and it's the helping
mhm.
people, but like that personal jump for you.
Mhm.
Like, how do you reflect on that?
Yeah, it's almost like and looking back, I'm like, wow, that did take a lot of courage. And I remember in the moment because you really just deal with the imposter syndrome of
Mhm.
like, well, who am I to be saying that I can help athletes with this
Yeah.
and all of that. And so, yeah, it was a big like embodying the person that you want to be. And honestly, we teach athletes about this,
Yeah.
but like
Yeah.
how does a mental performance coach that has like a bona fide business that makes money, that serves people and is in alignment with their passion and has the lifestyle that they want, like how would that person show up to a stage?
Yeah.
And yeah, I had to do a lot of that kind of work myself,
Yeah.
just I even I visualize myself
Yeah.
on the stage. I practiced like all of that. And yeah, I don't know if that's answering the question in the way people
No.
would want to hear it, but it did
Yeah.
take a lot of like just, you do deserve this. You've put in the work, you have the credibility. It was kind of a lot of that,
Yeah.
coming that.
And so that, I mean, as we talked about before, like I think it's seeing your sort of the stairs, right? Like the levels that you went, like that was obviously a big one. And
Yeah.
then what was sort of like the next jump for you? Like after that night, I imagine the next day you were, like you said, you were like, oh my God, people will pay for this.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if you remember, at that point, are you thinking bigger than Clark County? Are you like, oh my God, I don't have to be a teacher forever. Oh my God, I get to set this example for my kids. Like, do you remember where your mindset was after that?
I mean, I automatically went to like, oh my gosh, I could go to teaching part-time, which is so funny to look back at now that I'm like, no, no,
Yeah.
no. Like
Yeah.
that's how it works.
Yeah.
But it does give the hope. And I think that's like that
Yeah.
was the key thing is that it provided hope for like
Yeah.
the path
And
forward.
to keep investing, right? Like
Yeah.
whether that was money or time or just your own sort of ego, right? I mean, I think that's the thing
Yeah.
that a lot of people don't understand about entrepreneurship is like you do have to keep investing. Again, you can
Mhm.
invest. I know you invested in other coaching and like you can invest in that way. But even if you're not investing money, which, you and I agree that we should, but you're
Yeah.
investing time, you're investing like your own ego and your own dreams. And that's like a
Mhm.
really scary thing. And you have to make
Yeah.
sacrifices for your family. You probably had childcare or it was more on your husband or whatever.
Oh my
And
gosh.
like to keep doubling down. I mean, that's the whole thing, right? Is like nobody goes, like we said, from zero to whatever. It's like you have these doubts along the way. So,
Mhm.
did you have doubts along the way, or were you like kind of leveling up just slowly? I mean, at some point you kind of took off, but talk to me
Yeah.
about that too. Were there any times when you're like, oh, this can't work? I don't know what I'm going to do?
Yeah. I mean, I think as an entrepreneur, we have that conversation with ourselves maybe once a week.
Yeah, really.
Even at the level that we're at now, like we're like,
Yeah,
okay, you just kind of get used to that. And
yeah,
part of being successful is just staying in the game and pivoting and figuring like, okay, who can I learn from? What room can I be in? There's
yeah,
all, but yeah, of course there were doubts. And especially in the beginning, I mean, I got to give a big shout out to my husband. And, I do have a co-founder who
yeah,
happens to be my sister-in-law as well, who
yeah,
our families, I mean, we were both working, she was a manager at Boeing for 17 years. So we were both working 40-hour weeks in our real jobs,
yeah,
air quote, and
yeah,
then putting in another, 30 hours on building this. And that put a lot of toll on our families. And so there were some times where, we had some tough conversations and my husband, as much as he was like, yeah, I believe in you and I know you're going to figure this out, but like, how many
yeah,
more hours am I like,
yeah.
am I going to be solo parenting for how many more weeks? Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
So yeah, there were definite doubts and, the comfort sometimes of that like steady 9 to 5, you show up and you get the paycheck no matter what. Well, barring,
Yeah.
but so that started to look a little bit more appealing again. But honestly, like I can say, zooming out of those moments, like
Right.
this is just, I can't imagine doing anything else with my life, with, my passion, my purpose is so aligned. I love the schedule that I have. But yeah, of course there were doubts. But yeah, we kept learning, kept leveling up, kept going. And from there, from that like first kind of live via Zoom situation, we decided to turn it into an online course. And this is not everybody's path.
Yeah.
Like this was what we decided to do because I was like, we could reach more people. Like to your question, did you think beyond Clark County? And I was like, well, yeah, we wanted to go online and see
Yep.
like reach more. And so then we turned that 8-week program into an online version that
Mhm.
athletes could access via anywhere. And that was kind of the initial start of what is now the Elite Mental Game. So that's where we went from there. I was still also doing one-on-one coaching on the side, which was great for just like some income, but also to learn about my market and just like
Yeah.
being in it with athletes. I was also training some teams on the side, including my own. But all of that was good just for like income, but to know more about like, okay, here's what really works. Here's what is resonating with athletes. Yeah. So that's kind of where I went next.
Yeah. I mean, so we've seen like all these like the ups and downs, the peaks and valleys and everything, but like where you are now as far as like, I mean, as an entrepreneur, if you know, you're not like at some destination, but where
No.
you are now in your journey, I just would love like a sneak peek of like, or I should say behind the curtain of like, how do you feel about yourself as a woman, as an entrepreneur, as a mom? Like, because that is the thing, right? It's like, yes, you left your day job. Yes, you're making money. Yes, you have like time flexibility and all of those things. But like the real desire, I think, for a lot of us as women is to have purpose
Mhm.
and to feel like we are, for some of us, pushing ourselves into these different comfort out of these comfort zones. And like, how do you feel about yourself as an entrepreneur as you are right now, like having gone through all of this in the last few years?
Well, my first thought goes to when you do own your own business and you're an entrepreneur, it's almost like I'm not sure if I knew what I was getting myself into. And if I would have known, I'm not sure.
Yeah,
I,
right.
like, well, that was tough. But honestly, as I said before, I feel so just kind of at peace where with what I'm doing, with who I'm impacting. And then when we talk about kids and my own children that are seeing me and they don't really know what they don't really understand. They're like, she works in her office and she puts up
Yeah.
sticky notes on the window like a few
Yeah.
times a year. And um, but now they're kind of getting to the age where I'm talking about this and I get to help athletes and that I have my own business, kind of like you have your business, air quotes, selling art and you're setting the prices of that and you're
Yeah.
creating and,
Yeah.
all of
Yeah.
that. I'm like, that's like my mom gets to do and, on a different
Yeah.
level. So the fact that I am showing my kids to hopefully, that you can be both. You can be a mom that is present and nurturing and also chase your dreams and chase your passions and have the life that you want. So I feel really good about that. I feel good about the impact that we're making in just the world of women's sports and girls
Mm.
sports, because at this point, now that we've had this program around for 5 years and we've had over 4,000 athletes come through, I get excited about the generational change that in, women's sports is having a moment right now for good reason. But I'm like, I feel really good about this purpose that hopefully we're adding to that generation of confident athletes that are, just going to keep going through and impacting others. So,
Yeah. Amen to that. Any final thoughts? So I learned stuff. I mean, I've known your journey, but this has really been
yeah.
fun for me.
Yeah, I would say if you are feeling that tug and that gut feeling of like, I
Yeah.
know that I want to do something, if you're feeling that, then I would pull that thread and
Yeah.
see where that's leading. And whether that be, I mean, you have a webinar coming up and
Yep.
we're going to be sharing all about that or just checking out the certification, whatever it is, like I would listen to that. And we can
Yeah.
have a million reasons why we shouldn't, like the age of the kids and,
Hmm.
this and that. And you could make a case for it's never the right time, but you could also make the case for now is the perfect time. So,
Yeah. I agree with all that. Thank you so much for sharing all that. And as you said, we have a webinar coming up on March 12th. I know you'll put all that information in the show notes. And really, I think you really hit the nail on the head though with like really pulling the thread. I think sometimes we have these goals and we're like, I don't know where to start. And it's like, just start with, our ebook, which I'm sure you'll put in the show notes as well, which is like how to become a mental performance coach. And like really we have done it. You and I have done it. And I have taken over probably at this point 150 mental performance coaches. And many of them really knew nothing going into it.
mhm.
Nothing about mental performance, nothing about business, nothing about marketing, selling, had a lot of limiting thoughts, weren't sure if they were in the right room. We've had a wide range of people go through the program. I do think what you will learn in our program is you're going to take it to the places where you have community and you have connections and you have network. And most people find that is in sports, but there's other places as well.
Yeah.
But we do see things through the lens of sports. So I know a lot of people find us and are like, oh, this is what I've been looking for. They looked at life coaching, they looked at health coaching, or they started a business doing something else, fitness or something. And then they find us and like, oh, mindset, sports, I can do this myself. And we will really teach you. But like you said, you don't have to jump off the deep end. You can do our ebook, you can come to the webinar where I think you're going
Mhm.
to be on that as well. And
Yeah.
it's how to launch your mental performance career in 2025. And we're going to break it down. So yeah, you can just start and start. I think the thing is what we can do is we can help show you quicker if it's the path for you versus Googling it, where you're
Yeah.
going to get lost in Google land and YouTube and you're going to not know which way is up. Whereas you're
Yeah.
actually going to get answers with us.
Yeah. That's good. And one thing I didn't mention that you reminded me of is that I did not have a business background. And Christina didn't either, my co-founder, although she had like a business minor or something like that. They don't teach you, I mean, that college, this online entrepreneur, like it's all
Yeah, yeah.
world. So no, I did not have previous business experience. If you're like, well, she probably knew all of this. Like, nope, I had nothing.
Yep.
So
Yeah. What you did have was a will to learn all of it.
yeah, yeah,
And like you said, the willingness to invest in yourself and bet on yourself and pay money to go there faster,
yeah.
which is what it all comes down to. So, all right, Breanne, I don't know if you're going to sign up. I don't know if I'm supposed to sign off or you're
Oh yeah,
supposed to
you're
sign
gonna pass the mic back. So
Yeah.
yes, well, thank you, Lindsay. And those of you who are interested, can't wait to see you on the webinar. We will put all the information in the show notes. So thanks, Lindsay, for interviewing me.
Thanks, Breanne.